You are listening to I Survived the Wild Outdoors podcast, where real outdoors men and women share their heroic tales of survival. I'm your host, Brad Mathewson, and this is their story. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is a new friend of mine, and someone whose strength runs as deep as the wilderness she loves. Lauren Jean is an avid houndsman who runs a pack of 7 Bluetick coonhounds, dogs she hunts over in the pursuit of raccoons and bears. Her life has always been shaped by the outdoors, by independence, and by the bond she shares with her animals. But back in October of 2023, everything changed. During what should have been an ordinary hike, a tiny deer tick carrying Lyme's disease set off a chain of events that would alter her life forever. Within a month, the symptoms began to surface, and Lauren's healthy, active lifestyle was sent into a tailspin she still hasn't recovered from. Lyme's disease is known as the Great Imitator because its symptoms, joint pain, crushing fatigue, neurological issues, mimic conditions like fibromyalgia, arthritis, chronic fatigue syndrome, and even MS. In Lauren's case, the infection didn't stop there. It triggered heart complications and led to the development of P.O.T.S, adding a whole new layer of challenge to her daily life. Since then, Lauren has spent countless days in and out of the hospitals, tried multiple treatments with mixed results, and endured an enormous physical, emotional, and financial strain. A full year out of work has drained her savings, expensive medications and therapies, many not covered by insurance, have only added to the burden. And through all of this, she still cares for her 7 hounds and a flock of 20 chickens on her farm, doing nearly everything on her own. Her story is one of resilience, grit, and an unbreakable bond with the animals who keep her going. Can you tell us your story, Lauren?
Sure. So I think it's important to tell everyone what type of person I was, because the person that I am is completely different after this story gets underway. So I've always been an outdoorsy person. Grew up, they called me nature girl in elementary school. Like, I'd bring crazy stuff to show and tell, like broken bird eggs, bird's nests, animal bones, shells, rocks, salamanders, you name it. So I've always loved the outdoors and been very involved with it, but was never a hunter until later in life. I, did a lot of hiking and recreation and got into hunting I think it was my mid-20s when I adopted a Bluetick coonhound from the Humane Society. And she actually taught me about hunting, and more specifically hunting with dogs. And she got into training squirrels at the dog park. And I went down a rabbit hole and found out that, she's a coonhound, and this is what coonhounds do, and this is what kind of competitions you can take them to, and ended up getting into that world of being a houndsman. And it escalated very quickly. I went from 1 dog and to, 8 at one time. And that's kind of, it's not the reason behind this story, I don't think, because anybody can contract the disease that I have. But it's a driving factor because when I believe I got sick or got bitten by a tick was in October of 2023. So every year in October, my friends from Ohio drive across the Midwest, out west, to go hunting with their bird dogs. And they stop for their first big stretch your legs part of the journey. And we meet usually early in the morning, 5, 6 a.m. At a public spot about an hour from my house. and we let the dogs run. Typically we'll have between 10 and 15 dogs running around, and we'll have time to hike around and catch up and all just stretch our legs. And I get to see a friend that I only get to see once a year and just talk to the rest of the time. So years before, we normally went to a class 1 field trial grounds, kind of between Portage and Wisconsin Dells. And this time I was like, oh, let's try somewhere else. I've always wanted to see this piece of public land. And we got there. I'm like, oh, yeah, this looks really cool. And we start our hike, not thinking a thing. And it was a beautiful morning, and the dogs are running around, and we're talking. And at one point, my dogs even ended up treeing a woodchuck, which was a first for me. I didn't know that they climbed trees at that point. And after being out in like the prairie and kind of surrounding woodland area, but we were mostly in the tall grass, walking around. It was like a high plateau area of the land, and you could see out like down into the woodland, and then there was kind of like marsh around it. So we were on the high ground, and ticks weren't even on my mind at all. And when we got back to the truck, they have a couple long-haired dogs, and they have to brush the dogs out after romping around just to keep them snarl free, get the burrs out, everything like that. And they were pulling ticks off the dogs. They were pulling ticks off their pants. And I checked myself, and I was like, I don't see anything. Like, I ran my hands across my dogs who are on preventatives. Didn't notice anything, and just never thought about it at all, until I'm not even sure when I kind of put 2 and 2 together. Maybe in the course of the story, I'll figure it out. So that was in October of 2023, and I began to start feeling strange around November of 2023. I remember driving while I was in the rear seat of my parents' vehicle, driving to like a Thanksgiving celebration down in Illinois where my grandparents lived, and I was just not having a good day. I was having migraines quite often, which I would have migraines typically, but not at the frequency that I had was then having them. It almost seemed constant. I was also just feeling like achy all over, like kind of like the early stage of the flu where like something's just not right in your body. You just feel kind of like and then I think it was on the way home, I just felt like electricity was just zapping through my body, like from one place to another. Very sharp pains that would be in one place 5 seconds and then move to somewhere completely different. And I was just like, well, maybe it's just a symptom of my migraine. It's just a new presentation of what's going on. And then I just felt very just malaise, like little joint stiffness, the migratory pain. Never realized or saw a rash on my body. Never found a tick. And the way that I was feeling goes along with the fact that Lyme disease, what I later got diagnosed with, in addition to other things, is called the Great Imitator. So I do want to say, before I get really deep into this, that all of this is just my experience, and it's not any medical advice, and I'm not a doctor. So this is just my personal experience and opinions. So that was October when I think I probably got bit, never found a tick. November started feeling symptoms. December even felt more icky, just icky, and I couldn't really describe it. And from the little at the time that I knew about Lyme disease, I was like, maybe it's that. And my insurance deductible was so high, and before getting sick, I would see the doctor once a year just for your normal annual checkup. So I really couldn't and didn't want to spend the money to go see a doctor and go through all the rigmarole when I was like, oh, you can just go to like any lab test now and pay out of pocket for a lab test, and then I'll just find out if I'm sick or not. Like, I thought it was going to be that easy. Knowing my life, we should know that it is never that easy. So I drive down like an hour from home and go ask for a Lyme disease test. Now, at the time, I didn't even know that there were different tests for Lyme disease. So the one that they did give me was called the Western blot, which is not the first test that a normal doctor would give you. The Western blot is normally a test that you get after an antibody test comes back positive. So I get this Western blot test and it comes back and one band is positive. I think it was number 23. And I read on that test in just a brief like Google search that per the CDC, you need to have 3 positive bands. And there's specific bands that have to be positive in order for you to have like a quantifiable positive Lyme diagnosis. So at that point, just on the couple things that I read, I was like, well, I figured I must not have it because the CDC says you need 3. And that's, you know, exactly what it said. And I only had 1. And it on the test, it says negative, like that you don't have Lyme disease because I just have the 1. So later, now I find out that sensitivity on those antibody tests, which I didn't have at the time, which probably wouldn't have even meant anything, are as low as 29 to 40% in the first 3 weeks because there might not be enough antibodies to detect yet. The accuracy increases in later stages with sensitivity raising to 87%. But there's a lot of false negatives on those tests as well. And the sensitivity of both the Western blot and antibody tests just aren't as accurate as we need them to be, considering what an epidemic tick-borne illnesses have become. So I'm at the point where I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's just got to be something else, or I'm fine, or I'll get over it. Like, I'm a tough cookie. I live alone. I am extremely independent. I've got these hunting dogs. You know, I'm running around the woods 4 to 5 nights a week by myself, you know, hunting raccoon. At that point, I was also bear hunting and doing all the things, like very, very active. I was taking trips across the country to go hunt, whether it was Idaho, Colorado, New Mexico, running around to UKC competitions in other states, you know, titling my dogs. That year, 2023, I had earned 10 titles on my dogs. So I was a very, very active person and just never missed a beat. And then when I started missing beats, I knew something was wrong because I know my body, but just couldn't pinpoint it, and never really needed doctors before. So I'm like, oh, well, I don't know now. So December happens. Then we get into January. Oh, wait, December happens. So I'm still feeling kind of flu-like. And at the end of December, my dogs hadn't gotten out for 9 days, which was a really long time for me at the time not to hunt my dogs. So everybody's going crazy. I'm like, well, I got to get out. I got to hunt them. And on December 30th, I turned 2 of my dogs loose. And long story short, one of them didn't make it home. So she was shot and killed. And I don't really want to go into that story just because it's too much to gather myself to talk about the entire situation. But I ended up rushing her to the ER and they let her bleed out over 3 hours, leaving me just absolutely shattered. My future seemed ruined. She was only 4 years old and I had a $10,000 vet bill. And I think it was at this point that my body completely broke. The emotional trauma of the whole situation just sent me over the edge, where my body's like, I can't keep up with this anymore. We're going into complete dysregulation, and your immune system is broken now. We can't fight what we've been trying to fight. So that spiraled my symptoms far out of control. And I could still function before that just fine, and I wasn't feeling like incredible symptoms. Like it was stuff that I could just brush off and really not think about. I can tolerate a lot of pain, and it was just completely manageable at that point. So this dog's death was ultimately the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back and started the cascade. Shortly after that traumatic experience was the first time that I noticed symptoms of P.O.T.S, which is called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And it's autonomic dysfunction. So it's not just a high heart rate when you go from changing positions from laying to sitting or sitting to standing. It impacts like your blood flow. It impacts your gastrointestinal tract. It impacts sleep. It impacts sweating. Think of everything that your body does that you don't have to tell it to do. That's what it messes up. So I think it was early in January, shortly after that, that everything got worse. I started to get flu-like symptoms, respiratory symptoms, and the migraines got even worse. I went to the doctor for migraines because this has happened before, but not feeling exactly like I was feeling at the time, but I chalked it up to migraines. And I was like, I need some time off of work to get over this, reset my body, take the medications to just stop this migraine cycle. I thought I was in a cyclical migraine flare. So I ended up taking short-term disability from work to try and get right, and I just continued getting worse. My respiratory symptoms, my cough was so bad that I sprained the muscles in between my ribs, and I blew blood vessels in my eyes. My eye doctor said she's only seen that in diabetics and traumatic childbirth. So it was pretty bad. My lungs were making noises when I wasn't even letting air out or sucking air in. It was like a I don't know, some kind of weird creature just and I was like, oh my gosh, do I have pneumonia? So I go back to the doctor a month later. I'm like, I'm still sick. I'm not getting better. It's kind of getting worse, because at first she was like, oh, it's just a virus. What, just wait it out kind of thing. And I think I went to the doctor 3 times. So I went initially for the migraine thing, and then back when I was still sick. And originally she had told me it was a virus. And then I went a 3rd time when I'm like, yeah, I'm still sick. And at that point, she was like, okay, well, it might just be some kind of respiratory thing that, it's not pneumonia. We got tested for that, got the x-rays and everything. And she was like, well, let's try Doxy. Now, keep in mind, Wisconsin is a hot spot for Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. And my doctor is fully aware of my lifestyle and everything like that. But Lyme was just not on her list of things to consider. I don't even think we drew any labs, or just general CBC, which came back, I'm sure, normal, as it does when you're usually sick with this stuff that is so hard to diagnose. So anyway, she gives me 14 days of Doxy, which coincidentally is the right drug to treat Lyme disease and anaplasmosis. So I started feeling better. And at about 1.5 months from originally taking off work, I felt good enough to return. So I did. But slowly the fatigue and like general malaise kind of crept back in, and was keeping me down. So I got back to work, I think it was the beginning of March. And summer of 2024, I barely competed in dog events, which is extremely abnormal for me. Usually I was traveling every weekend to go somewhere, and I noticed that I was like, I just don't feel right. Like, I need to take care of myself so I can take care of my hounds. Like, it's just not worth it for me to go travel and do these events. And bear training season for hounds starts July 1st. I was only able to go one weekend the entire training season, which lasts 2 months. And I didn't go for hunting season at all. And it wasn't excuses. It was me knowing my body, but not knowing exactly what was wrong. So August 2024 arrives, and like it does every year, the Iron Ridge picnic happens, which is like the town picnic, dance, concert, fire station fundraiser event. It's a big thing in small towns to have their town picnic. And every year before I've gone, I have partaken, I've eaten, plenty of food. I had all the energy to participate in, the games that they had and go wild at the concerts and drink, the alcohol and all of that. And at this point, I was like, I really want to go. Like, I want to go. So I muster up the energy. And it was like, I was pulling my own teeth to leave the house. And it wasn't like from depression. Like, I just don't want to leave the house. I just want to lay in bed. It was like, I literally do not have the energy. Like, there's something wrong, but I also mentally like really want to be there. That's the hard part with this whole thing, is like mentally you have all these aspirations and there's all these things you want to do, and your body's like, hey, nah, not going to happen. So I go, and I only lasted an hour there. I tried to drink one beer and I couldn't even finish it, which is abnormal because I do enjoy a brew. And I got to talking to one of my friends, and they're like, yeah, like, have you considered, I told them about everything that had been going on. And they're like, have you considered Lyme disease? I think it was their aunt or somebody that had it. And I never really had. Like, I knew about like dogs and Lyme disease because I'm very in tune to like my dog's health and, what they can contract and how that impacts them and their performance. And I just never really was taught or educated myself, or nobody shared, any of their Lyme disease experience with me that I had to kind of go off of. So I was like, oh, yeah, maybe it is. Like, I had no idea, but I was like, maybe. So at that point, maybe it was even that night, I went home and researched about Lyme and how it can impact your health and what symptoms you might see. And like every sentence I read or every bullet point that I found, like every box was being checked off as I continued to research. And it was just like, whoa, like this really might be it. And as I'm researching even more, there's a difference between having Lyme in the acute phase, which is early on, and Lyme in the chronic phase. And as I'm researching, I'm like, I don't think this is acute anymore. I think it's chronic. So then you go further down the rabbit hole and learned that like normal doctors, like your primary care provider, whatever, don't usually are misdiagnosing you, which clearly already happened. They're under treating you for Lyme, or they might not even believe it. So I'm like, this is terrifying. So at this point in the story, I had migrating peripheral pain, heel pain, tailbone pain, extreme fatigue, forgetfulness, hair loss, achy joints, migraines. I was very slow to move. I had a lot of irritability and rage, mood swings, trouble concentrating, loss of libido, occasional tingling in my hands and feet, weakness, loss of coordination once in a while, not often, stiff muscles. That was like a really hard thing, like to get up in the morning and move. At that point, neck and back pain, decreased stamina with like exercises, chores, hunting, things like that. So I researched where to go and found out that there's Lyme literate medical doctors, LLMDs, and I had an appointment on August 14th. So that appointment was an hour and a half long, and they went through like your entire history, like childhood, your lifestyle, everything. And it was 2 doctors in there, and they diagnosed me clinically by clinical presentation, and just me relaying the information to them with not only Lyme disease but Bartonella and Babesia. And they ordered a test from a lab called IGeneX and some other additional labs, blood work. The IGeneX test came back a month later, confirming their suspicions. So they were right that the clinical presentation of Lyme, Bartonella, and Babesia was correct. In addition, I also had anaplasmosis. So at that point, the Lyme was chronic and not in the acute phase anymore. And shortly after that appointment, I left work again on short-term disability leave. At that point, I was really overwhelmed. I remember crying in that appointment, just feeling so validated that like whatever was happening to me, like I wasn't going crazy. And it wasn't all in my head. And I definitely was listening to my body, and I knew that there was something wrong. I wish that I had listened to my body sooner, but being the stubborn individual that I was, it makes sense that we're here now, just knowing me, and that I didn't want to go to doctors because I didn't want to pay the money and all that. And hindsight's always 20/20, right? So I didn't feel educated or prepared enough for this process in general at that point. Before I was diagnosed, I wasn't really aware of many of the symptoms. And then just in general, like from the doctors, I feel like at that point, they didn't prepare me with like how this can go. I felt incredibly hopeful at that point and did not realize that this healing journey was going to be so difficult and problematic and not linear. So I just wish there was more education as to, here's what you can expect, but expect, the worst and hope for the best, I guess, kind of thing. So what they did is they started me on a bunch of supplements and doxycycline. And I think it was like a 3-month supply of doxy. It didn't work. I was not feeling any better. It just wasn't working. And I guess our next appointment was in mid-October. And they decided and kind of pushed the route of doing a PICC line for IV antibiotics. So I had a PICC line placed, which is a line that is placed in your arm with a tube that goes all the way up your vein and into your heart. And I dosed myself with IV Rocephin twice a day. So while I was dosing myself with this Rocephin, I was actually starting to feel better through treatment, but it was starting to see more symptoms increase in severity that were connected to like other comorbidities of the infections that I was dealing with. So MCAS, which is mast cell activation, and P.O.T.S were 2 things that were really flaring. But like physically, I was still feeling good enough that knowing me and impulse control was always generally a thing with me, but with Lyme and all this stuff, what's the word? Brain fog is one thing, but it crosses the blood-brain barrier and creates neurological problems. So impulse control has gotten even worse for me over the years. So anyway, I decided at the time to do a Hail Mary breeding on a dog I had tried to get bred twice before. It was like my last chance to do it. And she was a very important dog, very deserving dog, very a dog that you would want to breed and have puppies from. She was bred 2 days after Christmas. So consider that was December 27th. Everything was all well and good, going pretty well with the IV antibiotics. I was staying on schedule, wasn't feeling too awful. I also started doing hyperbaric therapy and infrared sauna therapy. And the infrared with the P.O.T.S that I have was really interesting because it was, hot in there and I wasn't sweating. So the first couple times that I did it, I really wasn't sweating. And then finally, I started to sweat a couple sessions in. So anyway, I tried those two therapies, and I remember I was feeling so good one day after the infrared and after the hyperbaric. I was on my way home. I looked good. I felt good. I felt like I was in a good place. We're going in the right direction. And then that was probably 2 p.m. And by probably 8 or 9 p.m., I was on my bathroom floor in agony and pain, crying that something was wrong and I needed to go to the emergency room. So I am driving myself to the ER, which is 35 minutes away, thinking that something's up with the PICC line, or I'm not even sure. I feel like I have a fever, something's wrong. And I go to the ER and they tell me, I told them I have a PICC line, it might be infected. I don't feel good. And they triage me and I end up sitting on the floor for I don't know how many hours. I rated my pain as an 8 or a 9 at that point. They wouldn't even, I couldn't even get up off the ground in the waiting room. I asked one of the nurses to help me up and help me walk to the bathroom, and they told me they couldn't, they wouldn't. It was just an awful, awful experience in the ER. And they finally got me back after many hours. And once they get me into the room and they take my temperature, they're wait, what? And they look at my chart. They're huh? So originally, I guess it read as 99, and then we were at 102.9 by the time I got back. And then things started progressing very, very rapidly. And they're yep, we're admitting you. And basically I learned that I was probably septic. They draw blood cultures. They're doing all the other lab work and stuff. And then sepsis, that terrifies me because people die of sepsis. This is the first time I've ever been admitted to a hospital. I'm all alone. They're taking forever to get the antibiotics that I need. It probably took 6 hours for them to get the first dose that I needed. So I spent 6 or 7 days in the hospital. I also ended up having a DVT, a blood clot in my left shoulder. And at that point, they also did an echocardiogram and said my heart was fine. Okay. So they discharged me. I have another 10 days, I can't remember, or 2 weeks of IV antibiotics to do. They had pulled the bad PICC line out, but they had to put a new PICC line in the other arm. So obviously now I have PTSD from these PICC lines, and I never want to get one ever again in my life. To finish out my course of antibiotics for sepsis. And apparently recovering from sepsis is just a huge ordeal because your body's just been through hell, and it takes quite a bit of time to recover. While I was in the hospital, I had my dog that had gotten bred was supposed to have her ultrasound to confirm or deny pregnancy. That was supposed to be 2 days after I was admitted. Well, I had to cancel that, right? So when I got out, I got a new appointment and got the ultrasound on the 6th of February. And turns out we have babies on board. Puppies were due February 28th. So I'm out of the hospital on February 4th. And I took Piper, that dog, on her last hunt on the 6th. So just days after I got out of the hospital with sepsis, I am taking my dog out for her last hunt before having puppies, because I wanted epigenetics to take effect. And, it's just what you do. So I sucked it up, Buttercup, and in a snowstorm, we went out to the woods and we got a raccoon because she was the queen of hunting in snowstorms. She was a fantastic dog. So I'm not kidding that I thrive on chaos, and anyone who knows me would probably say the same. But it's true that these dogs are what is keeping me alive through this. And my providers have told me, like, remember how I mentioned like muscle stiffness and stuff before? They've told me that these dogs are keeping me in a better state of health. Not that my health is anything great, than if I didn't have them, because they require me to get out and move every day, whether it's, even just walking out to feed them in their kennels, or they need exercise. You still have to keep some sense of normalcy, and you have to move your body, or else you will get completely overtaken by this disease and all the other things that come with it. So not only the physical part of having the dogs is helpful, but the mental part is a benefit too. While you do have extra responsibilities that maybe people that don't have these animals or have someone else to care for, either their children or their pets or their loved ones, living alone is hard because you don't have anyone to talk to and vent to and cry to, and you're just alone in your house, like dealing with your pain and dealing with the struggle of trying to get better. And the only thing, keeping you around is the fact that you have these dogs, and they provide you such a sense of like responsibility to care for them, and emotional support, and just something to look forward to in the future, which is, I think, why these puppies were brought to me. I'm going to cry. Was to keep me going, and to have something to always keep striving for, and to look forward to, and to plan for, and to work towards. So it's been really important having these dogs, and everybody probably thinks, looking from the outside in, that she shouldn't have these 7 dogs. Like, it's too much for her. If she can't care for these dogs enough, she should get rid of them. Well, I've got 20 chickens too, by the way. So anyway, yeah. So they have been more of a blessing than a curse to me in these difficult times. Currently, I cry, and I still cry more than I ever have in my life before this, about the pain and the difficulty and the struggle and the stress. And a huge thing that I'm still trying to overcome is the time and life and experiences that have been robbed from me. So a little tangent. So the miracle happened, and 2 healthy boys were born. I kind of gave the plot twist. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. I spoiled the story. And we did have 2 puppies. They were born very healthy by C-section. So of course, like if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, right? So that was an emergency. Thankfully, my repro vet was on call, and I was able to get her in, and the babies were born on February 28th. I was so consumed with caring for them that my mind was really off of my pain, even as I was still healing from sepsis. And at that point, I had stopped Lyme treatment, so I was giving my body a break. Then, like I said, if something wrong's going to happen, it's going to happen to me. So the next huge blow was that Piper, the mother of the puppies, was hit on the road 2.5 weeks after they were born, and tried to save her, and it just wasn't going to happen. I took her to Madison and everything. And my body has been in fight or flight now at that point for over a year. So just when you say if you can't think it can get any worse, it always does, especially if your name is Lauren. So that was February 20, that was March 18th that she passed away. May, I finally got back on track and decided that I was recovered enough to seek medical attention again to try a new protocol that I had researched, and my dad had researched. He actually brought it up to me. He found it on his own. I knew about it before, but I just wasn't I wasn't sure if I wanted to try it. But we talked together, and we wanted to give it a go. I also must mention that all of these doctors that I'm seeing, especially for the Lyme disease, are like functional and integrative MDs, and I pay out of pocket for those appointments. So it's spendy. It's very spendy. So we see this doctor in May and love her. And some of my screenings and tests also indicated at that point that mold was a factor in my illnesses too. So let's just pile something else on. We get a bunch of labs drawn, or I get a bunch of labs drawn, and we do some tests. And then the doctor, schedules a consult with the creator of the protocol. His name is Dr. Richard Horowitz. So we've got to wait for that consultation to happen just between them two. So all of this takes time. My mold levels in the meantime came back, and while my house isn't great mold level wise, my levels in my body aren't extreme enough to impact the protocol as it can with some people, per Dr. Horowitz. So at that point, I need a couple more labs, and I need an echocardiogram to proceed so we know that I'm okay to go through with this treatment. So then June comes, and I decide impulsively to sell my house. So I owned a duplex in Milwaukee, and I was worried at that point, A, about the cost of all this medical treatment, B, about my job and what the future held, and I wanted to financially prepare for the worst, because knowing my life, the worst is going to happen. So I sell my house, got $12,000 over asking, but I originally wanted that house because I was relying on it for monthly income and as a retirement vehicle. But I needed to cash out on the investment, so that's what I did. So that was June. By mid-August, I'm forced back to work. They were threatening to terminate me. So I wasn't physically well enough to return at that point, but I really had no other option because I needed the money and I needed the insurance. I was trying to survive off of, at that point, long-term disability pay, which was 50% of my salary. So I think up until present time, I was out probably now more than $30,000 in income, and then tack on the cost of medical bills. I want to say it's probably upwards of 50 grand that I'm out. So I go back to work. Long story short, it was a toxic environment to come back to, but I had no choice. I have the echocardiogram that was ordered done in September because medical stuff in these institutions takes forever to book. I ended up driving 2 hours to get that appointment because anything more local to me was booking out into January. And I was like, that's not going to fly. So I got the results back from the echo. I go to my primary, not my Lyme doctor, and the results were concerning to me, but she wasn't concerned at all. And she said, well, cardio won't do anything different. And I didn't like that answer. So I went to the provider that I see for my P.O.T.S, and she referred me to the cardiologist that she works with. And I have to wait for November for that appointment. So November, which just happened, I go to that appointment. She sees me, and she kind of can't believe the echocardiogram report, and orders a repeat echocardiogram. So the echo that I had at the hospital when I was admitted in February, my heart was flawless. And the results from the repeat come back and confirm the problem that was there in September. So I'm in heart failure, which is wild at my age. So now we're trying to rule out the causation because I don't have any of the classic causes like age, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and I'm not sure what other sleep apnea can cause it. So we're going to test for that. Personally, I believe it is tick-borne related because Lyme and a few of the co-infections are known to cause cardiovascular problems. The research isn't great just for tick-borne illness in general. So there's just not a whole lot of documentation on it, but it is known to cause Lyme. What's the word? Not often, but Lyme is known for causing Lyme carditis or heart block as well. They're two different things, which can kill somebody. And that's why I asked for the echo when I was admitted in February, was to make sure that that wasn't going on. But now one chamber of my heart is enlarged, and I have some other problems as well. I guess between November probably November or October and now, I've also received 5 rounds of iron infusions because my ferritin was in the tank. And that can also cause a lot of symptoms and be a burden on your body. So we're trying to get that fixed. So we're kind of getting close to present day now. We have to wait more on the heart stuff. As far as the new protocol that I had hoped to start, and my dad really has hopes in, it's a gradual protocol where you slowly add supplements and medications till your body can tolerate everything, and then you add the final heavy hitter drug. And treatment can sometimes be worse than the disease, and I'm absolutely terrified of that. It's hard having minimal support, living alone. My parents live about 40 minutes away and maybe come once a week. I'm on a farm. I live on 80 acres. I've got 7 hunting dogs, 20 chickens, a driveway, all that stuff. So it's hard having mental support, and then know that you could go off the deep end when you start this final drug into the protocol, and I might not be able to get off the couch to do chores or feed myself. So I'm kind of in limbo right now, trying to decide if it's the right time to proceed. trying to weigh out what's going on with my heart and if it's too dangerous. And the other factor is I have these puppies that are 8 to 9 months old at this point, and that's the perfect age to start them in the woods and really get them cranking, so that they can be successful hunters. And I don't want to fail them either. I don't want to fail any of my dogs. While they're keeping me alive, I have to keep them alive and I have to keep them happy. So there's so many things to balance, and it's overwhelming. Everything that goes on with like the medical administrative stuff, dealing with short-term and long-term disability. Like there's some days I can't even open my mail. I can't look at my email. I have stopped being able to wash my dishes just because of the physical problems that it causes me, having problems keeping my house up, all of that stuff. So yeah, I've been really open with my journey, and I'm not sure if I would have been if I wasn't active on social media. So I have like some followers on social media, and I don't want to complain. Like it's not, to me, maybe people see it like that. But I'm just trying to like shed awareness and educate people on, Lyme disease, number one, and the co-infections, and then how it can impact people, and then learning, just about ticks, and stuff like that. So whether it's awareness or education, like that's kind of my goal as far as like being open about, my diagnosis and my journey and my turmoils and, my good days and my bad days. So I just really want to be there for people to hopefully maybe save a life from. So whether, it's, like I said, awareness or education, or, how to advocate for a loved one or anything like that. I mean, ticks are the dirty needle of the woods. They carry so many problems, and if they don't catch your infection and treat it early, it gets more difficult to heal from. So early detection and proper treatment is key, and that might be the reason that I'm going through this is to save someone else's life, because I don't wish this on anybody, even, my worst enemy. It's awful. I feel like I've missed years of my life, opportunities. Clearly I've lost, financial stability. And it really is difficult. Patients have died from complications of these diseases. Even Lyme disease, where you think it's just achy joints and feeling like the flu and fatigue. No, people die from it. So it's just, none of this is really something to be taken lightly. So to recap, to date, I've been diagnosed with Lyme, 2 different strains. I have Borrelia burgdorferi, which is the most common one, and then I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it starts with a Y. It's like an Asian strain. So I'd really like to know how I got that. Very curious, but we can leave the conspiracies for another day. Anaplasmosis babesia, which acts like malaria. It's a parasite that infects your red blood cells. Bartonella, which can cause severe neurological and psychiatric problems. Like, you're not crazy, you just have BART. Toxoplasmosis, tularemia, and then the other comorbidities I talked about, like MCAS, P.O.T.S. I have a connective tissue disorder, hormone imbalances, adrenal fatigue, mitochondrial dysfunction, heart failure, mold toxicity. And ticks can carry more than just what I've got. Like, there's probably at least 10 other diseases that they carry just in the United States. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then that kind of brings us to present day.
So to kind of jump back in your story, you talked about ticks themselves and how you always checked your dogs over, back in the fall of 2023. And I guess prior to that, spending time in the woods, were you aware of like checking yourself every single, yourself? I mean, every time you went out of the woods, or just your dogs?
No, I would check myself. I'm not sure if it was every time, but near like high probability, like probably at least 98% of the time. I would, after getting back from, hunting in the woods for coon, or whether it was bear season. So yeah, I wouldn't say I was as diligent about it, as I am now. But after that October, hike that I went on with my friends, based on them just finding on the ticks right away, like I went home and I checked myself and I took a shower like as soon as I got home.
Yeah.
And didn't find anything. But again, not again, I haven't even mentioned this yet. Ticks, you're not always going to see them. There's nymph-sized ticks, and they're smaller than the tiniest freckle on my body. Like I remember finding one that was dead and I put it on my arm next to a freckle, and I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, those nymphs are teeny tiny, and we have them here in Wisconsin, especially doing as much turkey hunting as I do. When I get home, I got a little boy, and he gets in the basement, and he strips down butt naked, and we check his hair and check him over. Thankfully, he's got short hair. Women out there, obviously, with longer hair, it's kind of an issue. It's to try to, try to find something that teeny tiny.
Yeah, it's why I have short-haired dogs, but I really don't want to be a short-haired woman.
No. But yeah, if people out there don't understand it, maybe if you don't live in the Midwest, and I mean, the ticks are everywhere, but if you take a pencil and put a dot on a piece of paper, that's how big one of those nymphs are.
Mm-hmm.
They're so minute. I mean, they're so easy to miss.
Yeah, and the worst tick, they're all bad. They all can carry different diseases, but the worst one out there is the black-legged tick, or the deer tick.
Deer tick, yeah.
But I do have a list of the other ticks, or not the other ticks, but I do have a list of the diseases that other ticks can carry, or that same tick too, if anyone's interested.
So when you're talking about the POTS, now is that like a symptom of Lyme's disease? Does Lyme's disease cause POTS, or is that something completely on its own?
There's factors that can cause POTS, and everyone that has POTS, it might not be from Lyme disease. It can be from, a car crash or a traumatic childbirth or long COVID. It can be like a post-viral infection thing. There's a couple reasons that cause it. For me specifically, I believe it was the traumatic event of my dog getting shot, coupled with Lyme disease that was layered on top of that as lasagna to just create the perfect storm.
Yep.
And truly the POTS is, there's no cure for it. There's no medication that you can take that magically takes away all of your symptoms. There's, symptom management, but it's been the most challenging part of this situation that I'm dealing with. Like I have a high pain tolerance. I can tough out like a lot of the Lyme and other tick pain. I can manage that. Like I'm a pretty tough cookie, but when it comes to what my heart decides to do, it feels like, you're running a marathon all day. You're getting a cardio workout without working out. So like your fatigue level makes sense. And I track my heart and my symptoms and stuff on my Apple Watch, and I have some apps that talk about my heart rate variability, and it's spot on. Like when I'm overloaded, when my heart is giving me problems, it'll give me an alert. When I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't feel good. And then all of a sudden that alert will pop up like, hey, your heart rate variability is showing that you're overloaded right now. You need to take a break. And that's even when I'm laying down in my bed working on my laptop, I'll like message my coworkers and be like, I don't feel good. Like my heart's out of control. Like I need to log off and take a nap. Like something's not right. And then like a couple minutes later or 10 minutes later, I'll get the alert saying that, something's wrong. And I'm like, yep, I do need to rest, and rest is healing. And you just have to listen to your body, and it's really hard.
So could you kind of maybe walk some of our listeners through what your day-to-day symptoms can be? That could, your flare-ups and stuff like that. What some of these things that you go through every week?
Yeah. So at this point, I've described some of my symptoms in my story, like early on what I experienced.
Yep.
And then like now what I'm experiencing is daily, I'm probably at a level 4 to 7 pain scale every day, all the time. So my muscles, especially in my arms and my legs, feel like they have like a fire and electricity running through them just at different areas. Migrating neuropathy is what it's called. And it just jumps around your body. You never know when it's going to hit or where it's going. And then when it hits hard, it feels like you're being stabbed. So you kind of end up dissociating to that pain, and living in a state of chronic pain is like hell. And it's hard. And it creates mental strain too. So I deal with that. Head pressure, head pain, coat hanger pain, which is mostly attributed to the P.O.T.S that I have. It's if you draw a coat hanger on your back, like over your shoulders and up your neck. I have myofascial problems and my body is just not releasing. My fascia is completely bound up. I can't sit now everybody, I just want to say, like, everybody experiences things in their own way, and everybody could be different. So like my symptoms and what I'm going through day to day might not be, how Jimmy suffers from Lyme disease or babesia or whatever. So just disclaimer. I can't sit for a long period of time for 2 reasons. One, the Bartonella causes horrible tailbone pain, where any pressure on my tailbone for a period of time makes me feel like that bone has been broken off. And then the P.O.T.S, my veins don't constrict when they're supposed to, so I get blood pooling in like my hands and legs. I can only shower about once a week because it feels like running a marathon. My heart rate goes to like usually 130, 140 while I'm showering, and the blood pooling is painful. And it just takes so much energy out of me. I kind of every day have to pick and choose what tasks are going to be the priority. So typically I get up in the morning and I'm a little stiff and I'm always in pain. So like to me, that's normal now. But I get up and I take care of my dogs first and my chickens. And then I come in and kind of gauge how I'm feeling for the day and whether I can start work right then or I need some time. I'm so fatigued that I usually have to take a break in the day and nap or just lay there. I have a hard time keeping my arms bent, whether it's for working on the laptop or a phone call, because they go like cold and numb and tingly. Like endurance wise is a huge thing. So before I got sick, I used to hunt 4 to 5 nights a week and walk about 5 miles a time at least. And the dogs would go, I don't know, between 10 and 14 miles a night. And now we're down to maybe once a week, every other week, able to get out, and maximum 1 mile, but there are exceptions. And the other night I did take my dogs out, and my heart rate, while just trying to like walk around, was 180 beats per minute. So your body, when you're doing normal things that shouldn't be, like you're running from a grizzly bear, your body thinks you're running from a grizzly bear. What else? Yeah, constant migraines. Sometimes I get ear hunger. That's the babesia talking. I have heel pain, and it's not, they've checked, it's not plantar fasciitis. They actually saw the inflammation in my heels on an x-ray. So you have total body inflammation in every system of your body. I have GI symptoms. I am nauseous. I haven't been able to eat. I've lost 35 pounds. I don't know what else. There's so many things. It's hard to go over.
So did the doctors, I mean, you spoke with many different doctors out there. Did any doctor ever tell you like one day that you'd fully recover from Lyme?
No. No. You hope to go into remission.
Okay.
Is the thing. And we're hoping that, once I get my Lyme in remission, the P.O.T.S symptoms really hopefully go away. That's my hope.
Have you had discussions with other people that are going through the same thing and found anybody else that has, I don't want to see, well, yeah, has anybody else beaten Lyme disease where now they could say, oh, I'm fully recovered, I feel 100%?
Not that I've personally spoken to. There's, some people on the internet that seem to have, but not that I personally know. Yeah. So, there's a chance. And someone who has gone through this protocol has, put it into remission.
Okay.
And I guess, yeah. So, I'm trying to have hope, but I feel like I'm so far down that, we have to be realistic too.
So
I don't know.
I guess what would your advice be to other outdoor enthusiasts out there that spend a good deal of time in the woods and tall grass where ticks are an issue?
Learn about tick-borne illnesses before you need to know about it. Basically, is like the big thing. And do as much as you can to prevent getting bit by a tick, even one that you can't see. So picaridin on your skin, permethrin on your clothing. Do not put permethrin wet on your skin. Spray it on your clothing. Let it dry in the sun. Follow the instructions on the bottle, please. Tick identification is huge as well. Knowing what kind of tick bit you can help you decide the next steps that you need to take. You can send ticks in to be analyzed as well. I've done that twice now since getting sick. There's different companies that do it. I sent mine into Technology, and it was $40. I do it for ticks that I find on my dogs or that I find on myself. Just, what's $40 at this point is kind of my thought process. And don't let your guard down in, the fall or even the winter. If there's a warm day, they come back to life. They can be around. Don't let your guard down. You can't catch Lyme from like an animal. You have to have been bitten like by an insect itself. We're still, there's still research happening on what other insects might be a vector for it. If you're hunting, chances are you had a tick attached to you, like from a tree, grass, leaf litter. You might not ever find a tick like I didn't. What else? Attachment time. That's another thing is I'm going through this, I'm talking to people that are local to me and they're like, oh, I pulled a tick off my daughter or whatever, but it wasn't on for 24 hours. And I'm like, That's a lie. That's a huge lie. If you think about it, ticks being the dirty needle of the woods, if you get, let's say a nurse in the ER accidentally gets poked with a needle and that needle doesn't have to be attached to her for 24 hours for her to, get HIV or something.
No.
The same thing for a tick. Of course, the longer the tick is attached, the greater the chance of transmission. But there's actually no science at all behind the 24 or 48 hours or whatever you've heard.
Yep.
So that's a huge one because I keep hearing it repeated over and over again, even from friends. And I'm like, can we stop here? Like I got to break the news to you. If you do find a tick and get it off, please research correctly how to take it off. Don't burn it off. Don't do any crazy things. Just gently use the tweezers and pull it out. Make sure you get the mouth and everything. Wash good with soap and water. Keep the tick. Send it in. I think it's 20 to 30% of people get the bullseye rash. So I didn't. So just keep in mind of that. What else? If you get diagnosed and treated early, like in the acute phase of Lyme disease, you'll probably end up okay. Definitely get checked for co-infections as well. And some of the tests that are out there aren't great. So you really need to do your research on the best tests out there for things like Babesia and Bartonella and which labs to go with. Because if you just go to the doctor and they just run something very general, it might not have the sensitivity level that you really need to have for that specific co-infection. So on a serious note, if you are diagnosed with something like I have, try and build a support system. If you have a loved one fighting, please be there for them and educate yourself on what they're dealing with, both physically and mentally, as much as you can. It's terrible suffering that you have endured or will endure. And it changes your body and your mind. Like I said, Borrelia crosses the blood-brain barrier. There's science behind that neurological change. This disease has made you struggle with relationships. Like I've struggled with relationships, even with family. It'll make you struggle with your body. You'll struggle through treatments. It has ended friendships, ruined marriages, split families, ended careers, troubled people financially. It's not easy. It won't be easy. It's incredibly isolating to go through, no matter if you have a husband, wife, partner. It's a very debilitating time in your life. Everybody's different, so it's hard to find the right treatment that works for you. And everybody doesn't respond the same, too. That's kind of my spiel to somebody who either, might get diagnosed, has a loved one that's diagnosed, and just people in general need to be aware of, because you never know what someone's going through.
Yeah, it's probably one disease out there that science really hasn't taken enough time to put enough energy into, and I guess our country in general just hasn't stuck enough money into it. I mean, we get billions of dollars in cancer, which is very important, right, obviously, but the tick-borne illness, Lyme disease, is there's a lot of different theories out there, and not a lot of money going into the science. So definitely
Yeah.
the more we get the word out, the better. I mean, ticks are found. I used to remember off the top of my head. I'll put it in the outro, but I had it right there too. Well, we'll put it later.
It's a fact that Lyme disease is actually in every one of the 50 states in the United States.
Is that what it was? I thought it was everyone but Alaska.
Probably there too. It's been diagnosed in every state, whether they caught it or not. But doctors might say, "Oh, Lyme isn't in our area." You know, let's say it's like South Carolina or something. Well, it's false.
Yep. Well, thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome. I hope whatever information I shared about my experience or knowledge can help save someone's life that truly loves the outdoors, or doesn't. You know, you can get ticks in your yard too in the city. You know, you never know when those little hellions are gonna wreak havoc.
As we close this episode, I want to leave you not just with a story, but with a call of action, grounded in science, compassion, and urgency. Lyme's disease is caused by Bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi and is transmitted through the bite of an infected black-legged tick, also called deer tick. These ticks are common in many wooded, brushy, or grassy areas, exactly the kind of terrain hunters, hikers, and outdoors people frequent. Prevention remains our best defense. Before heading outside, treat clothing or gear with 0.5% permethrin or bipermethrin treated gear. Wear light-colored protective clothing. Tuck pant legs into socks and use EPA-approved repellents on exposed skin. After being outdoors, especially in tick-prone areas, shower as soon as possible. Check your entire body carefully and check your pets and gear too. And dry or wash your clothes in high heat if possible. If you do find a tick attached, the correct removal method matters. Use fine-tipped tweezers to grasp the tick as close to the skin as possible and pull upward steadily. Do not twist or jerk, and avoid folklore methods such as nail polish, heat, or petroleum jelly. After removal, consider saving the tick. A lab like TickCheck can test it for Lyme and many other tick-borne pathogens. According to their site, TickCheck offers PCR-based testing that detects up to 30 different tick-borne diseases with high accuracy. If you want to learn more from the top public health authority, the CDC has a comprehensive section on ticks, Lyme disease, prevention, and what to do after a tick bite. But prevention and science can only tell part of the story. There's a human reality behind every case. Pain, uncertainty, medical bills, and sometimes lifelong consequences. My friend's journey shows just how devastating Lyme can be. In her case, it's not just joint pain or fatigue. She's faced heart complications, development of P.O.T.S, hospital stays, long treatment regimens, and heavy financial burdens. Her struggle isn't unique. It's a stark reminder that Lyme disease isn't always a minor tick bite. It can be a chronic, life-altering illness that the medical world still struggles to fully understand. That's why we need stronger advocacy. We need more research, better diagnostics, more effective treatments, and more support for people whose lives are upended by Lyme and other tick-borne diseases. Organizations like the CDC must continue expanding public education. Meanwhile, institutions and funding bodies must treat Lyme as a serious, widespread public health threat that it is. Each of us also has a role to play. We must stay vigilant, protect ourselves and our loved ones, and speak up. We must share stories like this one. We must push for more awareness and hold medical institutions accountable. If anyone out there would like to help Lauren in any way, I'm going to leave a link to all her social media in the podcast description. I'll also leave a link for the CDC and TickCheck.com. And also, remember to stay safe out there and enjoy all that Mother Nature has to offer. If you like what you heard today, click the subscribe button to hear more upcoming stories. If you or someone you know have a survival story you'd like to share, contact me at isurvivethewildoutdoors@gmail.com.